It was a great idea, and I believe it's just right. It was a holiday thing. All right, I got one today. They only gave to juniors and seniors. Like,
She's got 2,500 so far.
where's she going? Wow. Maybe she's a little smart. Let's take after your wife.
They only gave us $3,000 in aid.
How is that? More than that.
Of our income.
But everyone's there.
The assumption, right? The assumption is we will be you stack all those things.
Tell me this. Are you teaching?
They're around. They're right there.
I'm on opposite sides of the room for this BRE.
Yeah, I got a switching at George Mason.
Go up on my room.
Either George Mason or Jimmy.
How are you, sir?
Oh, hey there, Ralph. How was things for Sella?
I can't just speak to him, but
Hey, did you get my email today?
I just looked at it.
Okay, it's no rush. I just wanted you to know if you had seen what happened.
Sounds like there's an opening somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for your flexibility.
Yeah, no problem.
So that's,
I hope you get better.
yeah, so coughing is not the perfect lunch companion.
Then I guess if it's not your party, you really don't get to make the
Yeah, I'm usually pretty flexible. I took this job on knowing it was gonna be full time.
Thank you.
It's more than full.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I got it. Hey, that'll be the incentive too. All right.
There's somebody in the waiting room. They would have, yeah. She's served us a long time. I've done my part. Because I don't remember a lot of, and I know that.
What about Monday?
Good.
All right.
Still doing it.
You were right up there. Just
We try. Sometimes we stumble. Yes, kidding.
This area really bad.
Yes, absolutely.
Showing marks, like auditorium, and you would announce the winners. The dessert was pretty well.
No matter where we go.
Manassas won't keep us here, I'll tell you that.
2 or 3 people have a question. 2 or 3 people have a question. Yeah, when the question gets answered, you ask it first. If it gets answered, well, then it gets to someone here and it says, she had the same question I did, but, and then they go on.
Right. So there's a lot.
Yeah, that's the process.
So we need either
this or do this, or like.
Thank you.
How are you? Good, how are you doing? Good, good.
I could eat them while we're doing it.
Well, you know, you got two Geminis.
Supervisor Allen's in the front.
Oh, okay.
Outstanding.
I was gonna say, worst case, we could get Joe's presentation out of order. So.
Good to see you, Preston. I didn't get to say that when I came in.
Nice to see you,
No.
fellow vice mayor.
Now that I don't serve on BRE with you,
I know. Probably didn't catch up.
Oh my God.
Just this year.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not answering though, but I.
Right,
I love modern society. Summers, we can talk about that. I am the big soccer player, yeah. How are you?
I'm glad to see you. Not about to drive.
I had a tire that didn't want me to.
Sorry.
My mom asked you.
Hey, Robert. Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, how are you? I'm dropping my Vanpool. No, my mother told her not to. How are you, Kim?
Can't start.
You have more staff to do than we have
We went to a public hearing out in Haymarket before they were building the Haymarket Park and Ride lot. And I did the head count, there were 24 people there. And everyone did there wasn't a single citizen. 24 people. Rich was there. She was nothing but.
Added.
Oh, so I was the help.
She did the right thing. She did the right thing. I was like, I was scared.
I just smiled and all right. Got my shirt back. Nice to meet you.
All right. Put this up. Back to that later. Round this out.
That's the deal.
Now, Mr. Chairman, we are ready to start anytime you are ready.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Only one ticket this time. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another PRTC session, this June 9th session. I call this meeting to order. Public access has been provided by live streaming the meeting on PRTC's YouTube channel. This information was on PRTC's website, Facebook page, at the Transit Center, as well as being advertised in Inside Nova and the Freelance Star. We have 3 commissioners joining us remotely today. Commissioner Kenny Bodie, Commissioner Janine Lawson, and Commissioner Grant Sparks. So we just asked we both of them in. Oh, well, I got it. I got a little, here we go. I got you. All right. Commissioner Bodie, please state the reason for your remote participation and the location you are participating from.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I am participating remotely due to a medical reason, and I'm participating. Yeah, can you not hear me?
Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm gonna come back to you. We're gonna move on to Commissioner Janine Lawson. So Commissioner Lawson, please state the reason for your remote participation and the location you are participating from.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am at home because my 18-year-old son, we are waiting for his COVID results.
All right. Hold on for that. I can't. Well, let's try for Grant. Commissioner Grant Sparks, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
3 for 3. Yeah.
Yeah, they're talking, it's just not coming through.
Give us just a moment.
All right, so we'll go back to. So please enjoy your minute. Commissioner Bodie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Awesome, there we go.
All right.
So should I read that again, or you want to just?
No, I heard you the first time. I am participating due to a medical reason, and I'm participating from my home.
All right, so I need a motion for Commissioner Bodie's remote participation.
So moved. Second.
All right, we've got a motion properly second. We'll call for the vote.
Is he permitted to combine all the votes for all three, or must he vote individually?
Yeah, except then you have to separate it out if there's some decision that you
Okay,
That,
all right,
and then do the final vote for all three.
all right. So Commissioner Janine Lawson, please state the reason for your remote participation and the location you are participating from.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am at home and I'm participating remotely out of caution as we wait for our 18-year-old son's COVID results, which
Oh, okay, okay,
Wait.
thank you there.
Mhm.
All right, Commissioner Sparks, you want to chime in there? You want me to read it all over for you?
Good evening, everyone. I am participating remotely from Richmond, Virginia. This is my home. And so not only distance is an issue, but also I have a child at home with COVID.
Okay, so the previous motion I made, can we amend that to accept all three?
I'd like to amend my motion to include all three.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been properly seconded. Any discussion? No discussion?
And I believe that was a motion by Franklin and a second by Short.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
aye.
Karen Mills, Kim Short.
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sebeski,
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
All right, thank you, ma'am. If we could rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's proceed, ma'am, if you could call the roll.
Victor Angry,
Here.
Andrea Bailey, Kenny Bodie,
Here.
Margaret Franklin,
Here.
Janine Lawson,
Here,
Yesli Vega, Pete Canland, Maggie Hansford, Kalai Kandasamy, Karen Mills, Kim Short,
Here.
Ann Wheeler, Tanisha Allen,
Here.
Monica Gary, Meg Bunky, Pamela Young, Pamela Sebeski,
Here.
Ralph Smith,
Here.
Jeanette Rischel, Preston Banks,
Here.
Alana Mensing, Daryl Moore, Matthew Kelly, Jason Graham, Deborah Frazier, Lori Hayes, Tim McLaughlin, David Ross, Jennifer DeBrule, Todd Horsley, Grant Sparks,
Here.
and George Parker.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any commissioner want to make any changes to the agenda? Okay, so I have a motion that's been properly seconded. Any discussion? Ma'am, if you could call.
And I believe that was Allen and Franklin. Is that correct?
Short.
Allen and Short. Thank you. Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin. Aye. Janine Lawson,
aye.
Karen Mills.
Aye.
Kim Short,
Yes.
Tanisha Allen,
Yeah.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sebeski,
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion's approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up is the approval of the minutes of the May 5th meeting. So if I can get a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
All right, and a second.
Second.
Okay, got a motion to properly seconded. Any discussion? No discussion, ma'am. Call for the vote.
And I believe that was Sebeski and Franklin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Abstain.
Margaret Franklin. Aye. Janine Lawson,
Abstain,
Karen Mills,
Abstain.
Kim Short,
Yes.
Tanisha Allen,
Yes.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sebeski.
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Abstain.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion's approved.
Thank you, ma'am. And now the man of the hour, Mr. Dalton, DRE update. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll start here real quick with just some performance metrics from May of 2022. You do have my CEO report in your packet. But just a couple of quick updates. From a ridership perspective, average daily ridership for the month of May was 4,800. Comparatively speaking, April was about 4,300. And just going back to February, that was about 2,785. So we're gradually picking up. For the first 6 service days of June, our average daily ridership right now is about 5,300. So we're again continuing to tick up. Do want to spend just a slight amount of time on-time performance for the month of May. As some of you know, and I know, of course, this was discussed at the VRE Operations Board meeting. Overall system on-time performance was 72%, with 90% on the Fredericksburg line and then 44% on the Manassas line. So for the Manassas line, the month of May, specifically over a 3-week period during the month of May, there was an extensive track maintenance program performed by Norfolk Southern. And again, as discussed at the Operations Board meeting, we were originally approached with about an 8 to 9 week duration for that project that would effectively delay every one of our trains. And so we worked with Norfolk Southern, and in combination of sort of rerouting some of their work or scheduled work, and VRE also made a temporary reduction to our schedule. In other words, we reduced some reverse flow trains, and but kept our highest ridership trains out there. And so we were able to reduce that down to a 3-week period. So essentially, we were able to get in there. That major maintenance was accomplished and completed by the end of May. And just give you an idea of where we're at right now. Again, for the first 6 service days of June, we're back up on the Manassas line to about 86% on-time performance, and then roughly right about 90% on the Fredericksburg line. So again, I did want to spend a little bit of time on that. If you had any questions, Mr. Chair, that's the end of my report, Mr. Chair.
All right. All right. Thank you, sir.
But we do have
We have
a couple of items.
we have some action items.
So
Yes,
that's
sir.
why we made that somewhat concise. So let me just dive into it, Mr. Chair, commission members. So item 6.2, as recommended by the VRE Operations Board and approved last week at the NBTC Commission meeting, the PRTC Commission is being asked to approve Resolution 6.2, which will authorize the issuance and sale of Transportation District Special Obligation Revenue Bonds, Series 2022. In accordance with the VRE Master Agreement, NVTC is designated to be the issuer of all bonds and the notes to finance project costs related to VRE commuter rail service, with an authorization and consent coming from PRTC. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn to Mr. Schofield, who's our Chief Financial Officer. He will give a concise presentation on essentially what the elements of that sale will look like. But I also want to point out, in addition to the Commission's counsel for VRE, Steve McIsaac, we do have Joanne Carter from PFM, who's our financial advisor, Mike Graff from McGuire Woods, who's bond counsel, and Scott Detar from Bank of America, who's the lead underwriter. So here's some resources for you if you have questions. These are the folks that have helped us put this transaction together to this point. So with that, I'll turn to Mr. Schofield.
All right, thank you, Rich. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission members. It has been a multi-year process to get us to this point. It started all the way back in 2018 when the General Assembly created the Commuter Rail Operating and Capital Fund. In 2019, there was the announcement of the Transforming Rail in Virginia program. In 2021, BRE entered into that agreement that Rich just mentioned with the VPRA, committing us to this debt issuance and the use of those proceeds to help with the purchase of the right-of-way from CSX. And then earlier this year, all 9 of the BRE member jurisdictions independently and unanimously consented to the issuance as required by the master agreement. So it has been a long process, and we were very happy to be finally here at the end. Just to, again, to overview the bonds very quickly, if you keep one thing in mind about the transaction, just remember that we have committed to a certain amount of debt service coming out of our BROC monies. We have not committed to a certain dollar amount of net proceeds to give to VPRA. So even though the market may have some uncertainty, we know what the debt service is that we're going to be committed to. The maximums, which are there in the documentation, the aggregate principal amount of the bonds will not exceed $140 million. The true interest cost on the bonds will not exceed 6.5%. And the maturity date of the bonds will not exceed December the 31st, 2053. Our current plan is to issue these bonds with level debt service of $7.5 million each year across the 30-year term of the debt. Based on the current conditions in the market as of yesterday, this would result in a par amount of $121 million, a true interest cost of 3.71%, and net proceeds to transfer to VPRA, of approximately $126 million. Those of you who were here at the operations board last month will note that the market has improved versus where we were then, with the net proceeds having increased by about $4 million. That said, of course, all of these figures are preliminary. They will really end up will depend on the market conditions at the time of this. Just 2 pieces of particularly good news, I think, about the transaction. One is the credit ratings. If you'll recall, earlier in the process, Joanne and her team at PFM looked at the expected credit rating that we thought the bonds would receive. So that assessment was modeled based on the strength of the pledged revenues, the general credit quality here in the Commonwealth, the economic strength that we have here in Northern Virginia, and the overall structure of the proposed bonds. So based on that preliminary look, the investment grade credit rating in the AA range was expected. So during the week of May 9th, the public ratings on the bonds were released by Moody's and S&P. S&P has rated the bonds as AA, and Moody's has rated the bonds as AA1, which is actually 1 notch higher than we expected at AA2. This is a very positive outcome that I think reflects on the overall credit quality. The other item that I wanted to mention is that the bonds have received an independent green bond designation. So investors are increasingly interested in having bonds in their portfolios that will support environmentally sustainable projects. We engage with Kestrel Verifiers, who's one of the leading companies in this area, and we demonstrated to them how the increased rail service that will come along with the TRB program will reduce the emissions in the future of both greenhouse gases and particulates. They have certified that our bonds conform with the green bond principles and have given us the green bond designation. We believe that the designation will make the bonds more marketable and draw in more investors. You have in the document in the documents there a list of a number of different bond documents. I believe it's 9 or so. I will not go through each of those in detail. I will draw your attention just to one of them. That is the POS, or the preliminary official statement. The POS is an informational disclosure that is used by the underwriters to market the bonds to potential investors. The POS includes a bond counsel opinion by McGuire Wood. And this opinion specifically states that the Series 2022 bonds are not a debt of the Commonwealth. They are not a debt of any political subdivision thereof. And that includes BPRA and all of the local jurisdiction members of both of the commissions. Steve has also provided a memo to you on this same topic. From the beginning of this transaction, we have committed to structuring the bonds with no liability for the jurisdictions. And these are the documents that give you the demonstration that has been done. Just to close then with our next steps, and then of course, we'll be happy to take your questions. All of these next steps are of course contingent on your approval this evening. The POS and the other marketing materials were posted last week on June the 3rd, after the approval was gained from NBTC. All of the materials were clearly marked as still being subject to PRTC's approval. And once you take the action this evening, all of our approvals will now be in place. We intend to price the bonds next week and then to close the transaction before the end of June. The specific dates that we do that may depend on the conditions in the market. And I will close then by noting that the underwriters really believe that there will be a significant investor interest in these bonds. With this being a new credit, with it having strong ratings, and with it having the green designation. As I said, it really has taken us a long time to get here, and we're not quite done yet, but the outlook is definitely positive. And we will then be able to take the proceeds from that and make a significant down payment on the future of rail in Virginia. And so I would like to express my thanks to you all as the commission for getting us to this point. And with that, I'd be happy to take questions.
All right. Well, that's a well-done process. Any questions? All right, well, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve 6.2 resolution authorizing the consenting to the issuance and sale by the MBTC of its transportation district special obligation revenue bonds, transforming rail and Virginia program series 2022 green bonds. So move. Got a second over there. Okay, we have a motion. It's been properly seconded. Any discussion?
I actually have a question.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just have one point of question. When the bonds are issued, are you gonna be tracking them according to the Fed rate, like to get, I guess, the best bang for your buck? Like what determines if you can use it to know?
I think that, Scott, is that maybe a question for you or?
Sure. So again, Scott Vitar, I'm with Bank of America. Try to make sure I understand the question. So try to make sure that we're getting the best cost for in terms of comparison. So sure. So we'll be working with your financial advisor or with VRE's financial advisor, and we'll be looking at comparable transactions in the market. And on any given day, the bonds are going to price based on the spreads that investors will be willing to accept. Our goal is to drive that credit spread as tight as we can, which will then lead to the highest level of proceeds that we can generate for the program.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. Thanks. First of all, to Mark and Steve, I know you've put just countless hours into this. Like you said, this is a project that you've been working on for years, so I'm sure it feels good to be here, see the light at the end of the tunnel. Just a basic question. Will these bonds be tied to specific capital projects, or I'm looking for like a list of, like I see the capital projects update, in Rich's report, but when we issue these bonds, are they going to be tied to specific projects like we do at the county?
I'll take that one. That's a good question, Ms. Lawson. So the proceeds from these bonds will only have one use. They will go to assist with VPRA's purchase of the right-of-way from CSX. However, if you remember that the agreement that we have with VPRA has a part 2 to it also. So we have committed to make cash contributions to VPRA over a 10-year period using this EROC money. And that will go to some specific capital projects like the Long Bridge, like the 4th track, like the bypass in Springfield. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the clarity.
Sure.
All right. Any other discussion? Christina,
And just for my records, that was a motion by Commissioner Franklin and a second by Commissioner Allen.
Correct.
Thank you. Victor Angry.
Aye.
Kenny Bodie.
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Karen Mills, Kim Short,
Yes.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sabeski,
Yes.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. You got two more. For these next two, I want to ask because they really flow well together if you look through these. If you could go through both of these action items, and then we'll get to, if the commission is all right with that, we'll make a motion on the both of these. We'll go through both action items. If you have any questions about it, we'll just go at one time. Thank you, sir.
Just Mr. Chair. So the first of the two would be 6.3.
6.3, yes, apologize. That's the 6.2. 6.3, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So 6.3, previously, the Operations Board has recommended this for approval. NBTC once again approved this at their commission meeting last week. So what we're seeking is authorization to amend the contract for maintenance services for commuter rail with Keolis Rail Services Virginia in the amount stated in the resolution for a total contract value not to exceed $58,926,279 through June 30th, 2023. So specifically, and just or actually with this resolution and the next one, what we're really doing is we've already gone through the budget process, and these costs have been accounted for in the FY 2023 budget. So what we're doing is we're coming back around to get authorization to amend the contracts to get the contract authorization amounts in there. So I just want to make that point. And similar to 6.4 or 6.4 or similar, we're just seeking authorization to amend the contract. And this is for the operating services portion of our service that Keolis Rail Services Virginia also has the contract for. And again, it's in the amount stated in the resolution for a total contract value not to exceed $230,588,057. And that's essentially for the 13th year of this contract. So that's my summary, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? No questions? Okay, so I'm gonna ask for a motion on item 6.3 and 6.4. I'll just read them very briefly. Resolution to authorize the VRE CEO to amend the contract with Keolis Rail Services Virginia LLC for maintenance services for commuter rail. And resolution to authorize the VRE CEO to execute an amendment to the contract with Keolis Rail Services Virginia for operating services for commuter rail. Can I get a motion?
I move item 6.3 and 6.4 forward. Second.
We have a motion to properly seconded by Commissioner Short. Any discussion? No discussion? And call for the roll.
Mr. Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Karen Mills, Kim Short, Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sabeski.
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir.
And then just one last thing, we do of course have the information items and the agenda minutes and all that stuff in the package from the May 20th meeting. So unless you have any other questions, Mr. Chair, that concludes my.
Thank you, sir. Good man. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you for that report.
Appreciate you as well.
All right. Public comment time. Do we?
Mr. Chairman, no one had submitted comments prior to the deadline.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. All right, moving on, consent agenda. Action item approved, so resolution to approve consent.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion, we've properly second. Second. Any discussion? None of that, we don't need any of that? Okay, so we'll just call a roll and move on to this.
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Karen Mills, Kim Short,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary.
Aye.
Pamela Sabeski.
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we're on the executive director's time.
Yes, thank you, sir. Couple of items of information. Ridership continues to increase both for commuter and local services. May ridership is still unofficial. Some data is filtering in for the last week of the month. But preliminary totals for both local and express will push us to a combined 1 million passengers for the year. I think we closed last year in the 820s. So that's an example of growth there. And we'll probably close out the year in the 1.15 to 1.2 million range for June. On Tuesday, we had our first over 5,000 commuter customer day. So that's the highest ridership we've seen since pre-pandemic. So definitely coming back strong and are excited for fall 22. We did submit our Lono grant application to the FTA on May 31st. Application includes up to 6 electric vans and 2 staff vehicles, sufficient charging stations for staff fleet, along with the visitor component, as well as an employee component. So we're trying to encourage utilization and have the capacity to branch out more in the community and be leaders in the EV market. It also includes sufficient expenses for related workforce training, different driving techniques, different mechanic techniques, etc. Public hearing and staff outreach will take place at the Transit Center next week on June 15th to solicit comments regarding our proposed Sunday local and print service schedules. We're taking the approach, instead of doing the evening meeting, we're doing meetings, remind me of the times, Perrin, from 10 to
3 to 7 will be the hearing itself, and then from 10 till about 3 or 4 will be the outreach itself.
And we're just hanging out with our customers. So come by, get a bottle of water, chat with the customers. We right out front in the circle for the whole day. And that's the goal, is to really engage with our customers. What we find is we get more public comment. Whenever we ask for public comment services, not about the thing we're asking about, because we generally bring a good thing forward. They just have comments about other stuff. So we're taking this opportunity to raise awareness and go grab that other stuff, plus get the feedback on the service. So really open approach to engaging with our customers. Yes, June 15th. And this will all be in your follow-up tomorrow's packet. We do have our councils. We have our business council, and Holly's going to kill me for forgetting the list. It's just the business council.
It's the employer council and the Hispanic council.
Both of those have their quarterly meetings at the end of the month. We'll be sending, look in the emails. We'll be sending that out to you, post on social media. So it's just me reminding you to look for it from Christine, but all the details, the flyers, the information will all be included in that message to you. So far, we've had about 240 survey results for that Sunday service, and 94% have been in favor. So it's a very, very positive thing in the community for what is a relatively lower cost service compared to other modes of transportation. I'd like to thank the commissioners that were able to make it to Roanoke last week for the Virginia Transit Association annual meeting and bus expo. It's great to see not only staff there, but have commissioners for the first time really seeing the different elements of the state that we're doing. We're bringing in ideas from around the state, and other organizations are stealing from us. So that's a good thing. We are leaders in the industry. We are leaders in the state. And hopefully it was great to have everyone together. Not only the new products come along, but the evolution of low and no emissions vehicles. So they were on display, and it was a great chance to talk with vendors, get information. A highlight of the event, well, the second highlight, the most important highlight of the event was when the entire room sang "Happy Birthday" to the chair.
That was great.
And so, it really overdid, outshined the fact that we did win our second award in a row. This year, we took home the Innovative Service Outreach for the Microtransit project, which you're gonna be voting on tonight. So it was an award-winning process. So hint, hint, nudge, nudge. But no, it was really great, and Joe will kind of give you an overview in his presentation of why we did win that award and the positive impacts from getting out in the community, and to continue to do that, bringing on an ongoing basis that approach to what we do in our service development. So remember last year we won it for safety. I always like to get that factor in there. So those are my core highlights. Ms. Barbara Murdoch of Keolis, provider update this evening.
Good evening, commissioners and colleagues. Unfortunately, tonight this afternoon, we've had another mass shooting in Smithfield, Maryland. So I just wanted to alert you that weekly we're doing see something, say something training. Our active shooter training is also going forward with our operators, but something we just have to stay up on top of. Recruiting, retention, and employee engagement have been our focus for the last month. We raised our recruitment bonus by $1,000. We're also now asking for giving $3,000 if you'd like to come work with us, and you don't have to have a CDL if you're an operator. We still have a $2,000 referral bonus and a $5,000 sign-on bonus for maintenance technicians. So if you know anyone, I ask every month, please send them to me because we are desperately in need of drivers. So far over the last month, we've hired about 5 new drivers. But as Bob and you hear about all the new service, we need about 15 more drivers. So we're actively recruiting to get more drivers and technicians in here. A recent survey by Prtc and Keolis show that many of our employees want to see our managers engaged with them more. So we are increasing the number of events. We always like to invite you to come to our events. In the month of June, we're celebrating Father's Day, giving away, I think, boutonnieres to the drivers. And we're celebrating Juneteenth during the month as well. So we'll keep you informed on all the events, and our managers are also scheduling their lunch time so that they can spend time in the driver's room with the drivers. We also found that there's a happiness quotient with our employees who work in Manassas compared to those that work here. And I think it's pretty obvious that, you know, the environment in Manassas is brand new, beautifully decorated. This is an older building. So to increase that happiness quotient on this side, we're participating in a renovation along with our client. We're painting, lighting for our driver's room, our dispatch, and also if you hadn't had a chance, I don't know if you've been out there, Bob, to see all the new lighting that's been put out in the maintenance area, which makes a really big difference. And otherwise, we're preparing to accommodate our Sunday service and expanded service later in the year. That's it. Any questions?
I just love what you're doing, so that the improvements, so yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Oh, well, thank you for that update. Yes, sir. Dr. Snyder. Okay, we're on to presentations. We have the show. There we go. There's the man.
All right, so in case anyone wants to see it, this is the award that Bob just mentioned. I'll leave it right here.
I was gonna say, I would like for someone to pass stuff. I would like to see it.
But I mean, I feel like before you get into anything, I'll try and be as concise as I can. But everything that Bob's mentioned, you know, regarding the outreach next week, us doing stuff in the lobby, the reason we got that, this all came about because of our desire to try and do things in a more community orientated way, to get away from telling folks what we thought the service should be and listen more to what they thought our service should be. And that dovetails with our mobility councils, 2 of which are meeting at the end of the month, the employer and the Hispanic. The Vanpool council just had its meeting. So we continue to do those. They go from strength to strength. And we really do feel like the stuff that we've done over the course of the last year to kind of do things a little bit differently has really kind of, you know, allowed us to gain a much better perspective over what folks in the community want. And that's been a completely team effort from top to bottom of the agency, from finance to, of course, Keolis, to our planning team, to marketing, to everybody. So it really has been an exciting time to work here. So I will just walk you through a little bit of the stuff that we have done over the last 6 months. In the last year, this now is the 3rd time that I've stood here in front of you guys to talk about microtransit. So the last time I stood here was in January of this year, where you asked us to go and relook at some of the stuff that we had done, call some of the folks on the petition that we had received at one of the public hearings, and do more of a due diligence. So my goal with this presentation is to hopefully show you that diligence has been done. So next slide, please. All right, so very, very briefly, because I don't want to, you know, just belabor a point. So this is a microtransit service that is scheduled to replace the Manassas Park Local 68, largely due to a lack of ridership. It's existed since 2019, has a shortest span of service, very long headways. There's also a negative public perception about it in terms of the amount of riders that it carries, that being not many. Next slide, please. So we were asked to look at this And the main solution that we came up with, that a lot of transit agencies are coming up with at this time, is microtransit. And so everyone thinks when they hear that, they think, oh, it's like an Uber. Okay, well, it is and it isn't, right? So for starters, it's not going to be in that type of vehicle. And it also isn't a point to point where you stand to where you want to get off service. That's a taxi. It's not. It's a point of aggregation to a point of aggregation. Your closest street corner, more than likely, so you're going to have to walk, you know, a few hundred feet, a block, something like that, to get to a point where it's convenient for the service to pick you up. And there are going to be other people who are on that service. The software that you use intelligently routes the vehicle so that it's optimized. That's how that works. The idea is that this could be offered in a pretty much budget neutral way, and present better than expected frequencies. The current 90-minute headways on the route are obviously quite long, and our goal with this is to offer anything between the 15 and 30-minute, you know, trip time, wait for the trip. Next slide, please. So what you see right there, that is our proposed coverage zone. That's purely on there. You've seen this many times, just to illustrate that this covers a much larger footprint than the current Route 68 offers. It's going to loop into our hub, so you can take it anywhere within that zone. If you are, however, in that zone, you do not get to take a trip. Oh, well, I'm in that zone. I can go to, I don't know, the Lincoln Memorial. Well, you can't. You can only go within the zone. But the advantage of this type of service is that it allows us to tweak this as things go by. But we have integrated this well with the other routes that we have in the area, and so we are very confident that this polygon will work. Next slide, please. So, very briefly here, this is the timeline that you see before you, and here we stand at the end of it. So, kicking off in July, you approved our outreach, July of last year, so almost a full year. And this just shows some of the stuff that we've done on there in terms of calling petition signers. We've had a public hearing, we've had a town hall. We also had, which was actually the most successful of the three, a listening session, which was a much more unstructured event in the sense that we didn't go in with a big, huge presentation like this to kind of, you know, bonk people over the head with. That wasn't the goal. The goal was simply to listen to the people who came to the meeting. And that was actually an extremely valuable way of getting people's feedback. It was much less threatening. I don't think that myself and Perrin are particularly threatening in the first place, but insofar as we are, that was much less threatening. We had a lot of extremely positive feedback. That was at the Manassas Park City Hall, extremely well attended, and that's certainly a model that we will look to emulate going forwards. So we can go to the next screen. All right, so phase one. This was the stuff that we had originally done before you guys asked us to go away and maybe do a little bit better, do a bit more research. We had the public hearing, we had the town hall, we had the public comment period. Our staff visited the Manassas Hub with information on the proposed change. We did a bunch of social media posts and ads in Inside Novelty and Latino, Free Life Star, and information about the proposed bus change posted on buses. Very much kind of the standard outreach that you do when you're looking for this type of stuff. Next slide, please. Phase two is what took place from then to pretty much now. So you had more of the targeted Facebook ads. We did communications to homeowners associations in the area. We also did a big ridership survey, which you'll see, and that really was a full court press in terms of staff hours, in terms of actually getting that done. Our marketing department did a fabulous job working with Manassas Park to get inserts in people's water bills in the affected area so that they were aware of the service and so that they could give their feedback. The survey was done entirely online, accessed either via a QR code or filling it out in person with one of our fine staff members who happened to be on the ground at the current time, and it was available in English and Spanish. We did that additional listening session that I mentioned, and we also met with the Commission on Aging, and that was actually the most recent thing that happened just a couple of weeks ago, and that went extremely well. We did have some concerns from the older community about how the service was accessed. Pam, you no doubt remember from our slightly less than successful second event that we had. One of the concerns that folks have in general about microtransit is, how do I access the service? Because I'm not very good on my phone. So that's okay. You can call in, you can speak to our same fantastic Prince William County based customer service agents that you would do for the rest of our service. or you can access it on a computer. We're going to be incorporating it into our travel training program. So it will be just as easy to access as any of our other services are. Next slide, please. So I believe that operator is a lady called Lolita, I think. I remember that, it's just a distinctive name. That's Holly Morello, our TDM program manager. That's on the day. This is the Route 68 ride-along week. So we had 10 staff members who volunteered. We spent 104 staff hours that week riding on the Route 68. And it's funny, I'd never been on a bus consecutively for 7 hours. And it was amazing. When I got off, it actually felt a little, Holly called me when she got home and was like, do you feel a bit queasy? I feel like I'm not moving properly. And you're like, yeah, that I feel the same, but I just never been on a bus for that length of time. So with our planning team, everyone went out and did a really good job with actually riding the bus all those time, riding the 65, checking stuff out at the hub, speaking to people on the bus, asking them to take the survey, taking it for them if they weren't able to. All that good stuff, and that was all to get feedback for the survey and to make sure that we had people who they knew about the service and they could give us our feedback when they wanted to. Next slide. So this is just some of the highlights of the survey. The survey was all in line in English and Spanish. Promoted during the ride along. We had 152 people who took the survey. Only 43 of them, however, answered all the questions. Some of the people just answered the first one and then just kind of left. The majority of people that we spoke to over the course of taking the survey didn't actually ride the 68. They rode some of our other routes that go in and out of the hub. They didn't ride the 68. Mostly morning trips, mostly going to work. Most of them connect to other roads, and most of them do have smartphones. Some of the full results of this are in your packet, but some of the things that you'll really see here is, you've got 80% that transfer to other routes, and there is a very high level of familiarity, both with the concept of Uber and Lyft, and then also, whether or not they have smartphones. That was like 80–85%, which was a concern that had come up before. Next slide, please. So again, a bunch of this is more in your packet. These are just some screenshots of some of the outreach that we did, and you could access the survey via this QR code here at the bottom right. Next slide, please. This is more of the same. This is the fantastic people at Manassas Park put some stuff up for us on their website. That's the Polygon on our website, and there's some more of the outreach materials that are in our marketing department site. Next slide, please. So one of the things that folks may remember is from our first actual public hearing, we were delivered a petition it technically had 100 names on it. But once you actually got down to the people that were unique names that you could actually contact, i.e. they had an email address or a phone number, there were 67 people on the petition that had signed about being concerned about the implementation of microtransit. One of our fabulous customer service department employees, Lauren Hill, so if you're listening, Lauren, you did a great job, contacted all these people 3 times. I only contacted them once, so she did the lion's share of the work. And we spoke to as many people we could. There were 33 people who had no information to contact. Individuals called a maximum of 3 times over 90 days, and 29 people were spoken to. Of those, the majority rode every day. Microtransit was always explained. It was not meant to be, this was not an exercise in trying to twist people's arms into being in favor of microtransit. We simply just wanted to find out why they'd signed the survey. Some folks didn't know what they'd signed. We discovered apparently this is a trend in petition signing, where someone will sign a petition just to have you stop asking them to sign the petition, as opposed to you actually knowing what the petition is about. The majority of the reasons that we heard as to when we got through to people who actually did have a concern, it was almost always about scheduling a trip, right? How do I schedule a trip? I can't do this the day in advance. Well, you don't have to do it the day in advance, but this is because people had just enough familiarity with our paratransit service to think that it was going to function the same way. You're not booking an off-route trip, a deviation or something like that. This is something that you do in real time when you need the trip. And as soon as that was explained, most of them were like, that's fantastic. We did have 3 or 4 people over the course of the 3 outreaches that we did, and the survey people, these are some of the same people, who are flat out opposed to the demand response model. The vast majority of these people, both myself and Perrin spoke to cumulatively for several hours each, okay? And it boils down to a belief that if you're requesting a ride, that's not something that a fully grown man or a fully grown woman does. That's not an adult thing to do, right? You go to the bus when the bus is scheduled, you follow the timetable and you go there and it shows up and it is what it is. I don't want to be able to request the thing. That seems like something that a child would do. And that was a fundamental block. Now, in that particular instance, we talked to those people extensively, but there is no getting over the fact that there is a fundamental gap there. The majority of the savings and stuff and the efficiencies and better headways that you get with microtransit are predicated on a fixed route service versus a demand response service. So that was the thing. So we articulate that. Next, please. We had the hearings. Again, 50 people attended across all three. One was somewhat contentious, one was completely neutral, and one was fantastic. In broad strokes, the information on them in the transcripts, thank you, Christine, is in your packet. Again, the concept of trip scheduling came up. Next slide. We had one written comment who wanted to increase the service frequency on the 68 instead of changing to microtransit. We had 3 calls to customer service. They all were in support of the change, excited about having it in their jurisdiction. And all those were responded to. Next slide. Main takeaways, as I said right at the top, so I said it really out of order, huge team effort. 3 main groups, those immediately in favor, those who were in favor once we explained that scheduling didn't have to happen the day before, and those who were opposed purely based on the actual model of the service that could not be persuaded. The ability to book a trip the same day when you need a trip was a major factor for group 2. Group 3 simply opposed, and there was a very small 2 or 3 people, and you couldn't talk those people around. Next slide, please. Conclusions. Vast majority in favor of the change. It is our fervently held belief that this will, excuse me, move more people over a bigger area more quickly. It better serves the needs versus fixed route. It is conceivable that those 2 or 3 people that we mentioned might not use the microtransit service because they are fundamentally opposed to the demand response model, although I suspect that they ultimately will. Huge potential upsides. The excitement for change amongst people in the area is spectacular. So later on, you will see a recommendation recommending the elimination of the Route 68 in Nassau Park and replacing it with our microtransit service that will go into effect on December 12th. I believe I have one final slide, please. Next slide. And there we are. And I'll just leave that there. I dumped that in the other day. You won't find that in your packet because when I put it in the packet, that hadn't happened. So again, this really was a team effort. And right at the beginning, there was a graphic for Team 360. And so we are really overhauling our outreach going forward. It is part of the organization's comprehensive goals to get more into that listening as opposed to dictating what folks want to hear. VTA recognized us for that, and it really couldn't have been more of a team effort. So I know that we've kind of made a rod for our own backs a little bit with the future outreach that will be required. But I think we all found it to be an extremely refreshing and enlightening experience to get out there and really speak to people over an extended period of time and make sure that your message was fully carried. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sains. Great presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had 2 quick questions. I'm interested about the group that were anti-microtransit. Was it a lack of understanding the fundamentals of the process, or is it just they were opposed to just change? And then the second question would be, what is the demographics of that group?
Okay, good questions. I would say that ultimately it boiled down to a fundamental, for 2 or 3 people, literally 2 or 3 people, it boiled down to a fundamental objection to the demand response model, right? They don't like the idea of having to request a trip. They like the idea of having a fixed schedule and it goes at that time, and that's, excuse me. And I think the other reason there is that for almost all of those people, how do I phrase this? The purpose of the trip was the trip, right? they weren't necessarily going anywhere, right? And the bus, you have the ability to be with your friends, to be with people on the bus in a communal environment. And with microtransit, you potentially lose that because it's a trip, right? And you're booking it that way. And so I think there was some reluctance on that perspective. But once it was fully explained to people, a lot of those people moved into group 2 and were like, oh, I get it. Now that I know that I don't actually have to book it, a day in advance, I'm all about it, right? But there were the 2 or 3 people that couldn't be persuaded.
And the demographics?
The demographics for those, they tended to skew, they were not young individuals. I don't want to say like they were old, but I would say they were over 50. And and the group was mixed, male and female, and actually all 3 of them were Caucasian, if that matters. But that's the breakdown of the demographics on those individuals specifically.
No. I do have a question. The representatives from Manassas Park.
It's a shame that the Marishal's not here.
Are you representing Manassas Park?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted.
Sometimes I try not to.
Oh, okay. I just wondered what you all thought about eliminating that route. I was asking.
I had a question, and I'll answer yours. First of all, thank you for the presentation. Out of the 152 respondents to the Route 68 survey, how many were Hispanic?
We did not collect the ethnicity portion of the survey. That was not asked.
How many were in Spanish? Because you said it's English.
It's in the packet. I don't have that information off the top of my head. It was certainly a small percentage. It was definitely not the majority, but I don't know off the top of my head exactly what percentage was done in Spanish and what was not.
Okay, so
I was just wondering if you were hearing something different.
We are, but it's hard to. We're not hearing anything different, but I want to make sure that we're reaching out to our Hispanic community. Manassas Park has the largest Hispanic population. I think you can.
We're higher, I think, by population
Percentage. Okay. And so we.
But it's
try,
close.
Yeah, it's close. But we try to reach out in here, and we haven't heard much. And so that's why I asked about the survey results. And it sounds like we need to do more outreach and listen to that, and see what their concerns are.
I mean, I can say anecdotally that we certainly had a lot of Hispanic riders on the buses on the days that we rode, and people who we did speak to in Spanish because we have native speakers on staff who did speak to those individuals. We did produce all of the materials for the outreach in both English and Spanish, and the feedback of the public comment period was advertised in Spanish language places as well as in English. And in addition to that, it was also promoted heavily over 2 separate Hispanic council meetings, both our own internal ones, and then also ones through the Prince William County Chamber of Commerce as well. So I think there's no doubt that we can always do better, for sure. But I think we did do something.
Thanks. So Ms. Fraser, we'll find out. I mean, but so far, the residents are not upset about it. Some would prefer that door-to-door service because they're handicapped or they're elderly. Just would like that better, but they're excited about this. We haven't heard any complaints yet, but it's that concern about the Hispanic population that I'm wondering about. We will hear from them when we get.
I'm gonna Dr. Snyder jump in.
One very brief comment. One thing that we would expect more Hispanic ridership, and we're not getting it. So part of it is we've really pushed outreach to gather that ridership and pull that group in. Hence the Hispanic Council. Hence the emphasis on adding taking advantage of bilingual staff, et cetera. Even with all that effort, fare-free services, the ridership is extremely low. What this does is it takes the route from being something that is inaccessible to the vast majority of that big green polygon and gives access to that whole big green polygon. So that's part of the difference is when you look at who has access to it now, it's people within about a 10-minute walk of the line. Who has access to it afterward? Everyone inside that green space. And that's part of where it's who gets the impact and who gets the access to transportation. And I will say Mayor Rischel attended both of the public hearing sessions, so she was comments to us, being very supportive of staff and thankful for the work they did.
Mr. Snyder, I noticed the Polygon, when it was changed for this microtransit program, we have a senior center and it's outside of the Polygon. I don't know if you guys received much ridership in the first place, or maybe that's the reason why you didn't include that senior center, but
I think the way that the Polygon was put together, and feel free to jump in here when you like, but the Polygon was put together around the bones of the existing Route 68. So essentially it was like within X amount of a quarter of a mile of the current Route 68, that's how it was largely correct.
And we also do have the Route 67 that serves a large portion of Manassas Park on the east side of 28 to Park Place and some of the areas back in there that were duplicative a little bit of the 68. So you have the microtransit and then you'll still have the 67 operating in parts of the Manassas Park.
that's what I'm talking about, like east side. Thank you.
Yeah, so
They'll have great service. Let's just say that their service gets better.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You know, I want to just first comment a little bit to Commissioner Banks' comments being in the city. We actually have a stop in one of our lower income, predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods. And I will tell you that though we have good ridership there, most of the people riding it are not necessarily Hispanic. So as they said, they're doing a lot to try to help that community, I think, try to understand what the service is. And actually, we just had a town hall the other night because of the parking in that particular neighborhood. And they tried to say they had no option to public transit. So I quickly let them know that they actually are one of the few neighborhoods that actually have a bus stop. So clearly there's much education to continue to happen. And maybe this microtransit will actually encourage that community a little bit more than they have before, right? So
certainly, I think if nothing else, it gives us, this is an opportunity to rejuvenate what is at best an extremely mediocre route in terms of ridership. Rejuvenate it, get a potentially younger, more numerous demographic to ride the bus. The way that you can interact with the service, both in English and Spanish or whatever your language is on your web browser, is excellent. You still have the ability to call into our customer service agents and access the whatever 13, whatever languages it is we have on our language line. So if anything, if nothing else, it should make it that much easier to actually avail yourself of the service, regardless of which language you speak.
So I wanted to say, having attended obviously one of the hearings that you had, to spend all of those hours, all of those staff hours used for actually riding this bus, talking to the actual riders and going to such efforts to make sure that they all understood completely what this was, how to access it. I just think it goes far above and beyond what most community outreach is. And we did ask for that back in January, and I would really want to take the time to thank all the staff that did this, because I think the feedback you got was excellent and really has been very helpful in letting us know a lot more even about that route. And so I just wanted to thank you for all of that. The one question I actually have is, you said that the majority of the people riding, when you did the survey, were going to work. I'm just curious how they got home from work.
Well, I think that maybe was inelegantly phrased, right? When they rode the bus, it was for the purposes of work, both going and returning.
Okay, I just was a little worried that we were stranding them.
No.
When the fees go up.
I just thank you again. Like I said, this is a very innovative way. Change can be hard, especially for those people who may be a bit more disadvantaged.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And I mean, we fundamentally believe that this will be a resounding improvement in the quality of service for everybody in the service area. You know, not because this is something that is, you know, kind of the moment in the industry or anything like that, but it gives us an opportunity to provide so much better service headways and so much better coverage, and you can interact with the service in so many more dynamic ways. We really do think that it will be a boon to that area and something that other jurisdictions will be looking to get as sooner as they possibly can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for that presentation. And now we're moving on to the action items. We actually have 4 action items, really 2. One's going to be the authorizing closed session, and then the other one will be to certify the closed session. So we'll get right into 11.1 action item, resolution to approve PRTC's FY 2023 budget authorization to draw down from motor fuel tax funds to subsidize PRTC administrative, Omni bus services, marketing, Vanpool, and capital budgets for 2023. Authorization to apply for federal grant funding in FY 2023. Highlight of that is approve the FY 23 budget and authorize the executive director to renew health, dental, and vision plans. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, you, okay.
Stafford.
All right. Commissioner Barker has the motion.
Second.
There we go. Commissioner Gary has the second. Any discussion?
Just really quickly, PRTC has been doing really well in terms of ridership, which I think is good. And so do want to make sure that we're paying attention to ridership as it relates to kind of our budget needs, particularly for the next budget cycle, seeing how ridership is impacted or will be impacting our budget for next year. So I think we're steadily going in a good direction, but want to make sure that we're paying close attention to ridership as it relates to a balanced budget. So just wanted to make comments related to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin. Aye. Janine Lawson,
No.
Karen Mills.
Aye.
Kim Short. Aye. Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary, Pamela Sabeski.
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Brent Sparks,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item, item 11.2, the foot stomp. Resolution authorize executive director to restructure the Manassas Park Route 68 local into a demand responsive zone. This authorizes executive director to restructure the Manassas Park local bus route 68 to a demand responsive zone microtransit. Can I get a motion? I have a motion. A motion. A second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Okay, there we go. All right. Any discussion?
Yeah, just want to just point out, Dr. Schneider said it, but I wanted to make it clear. The reason why we are restructuring the route in the first place is because of low ridership. And that's important to kind of note and stick. If it weren't for that, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So I think microtransit still allows for this route to be actually even more efficient for those that actually need it. I spoke with Mayor Rischel. She is supportive of this. She said that the past couple of events went well. Comments have been positive. And so we were supposed to, I think, vote on this a while back, but we actually extended the time to do additional outreach. Staff has done that. And I think that microtransit is a good transition, particularly for this route. So just wanted to clarify that the reason why this discussion has even come about is because the route wasn't doing, the service wasn't doing well on that particular route. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, I just want to say, I think for me, and what this tied to is the field trip that we took down to Roanoke and really watching that transportation industry. So we got to get in a few of these microtransit bus vehicles. Now, they were electric, which is the future of where we're going. I think we're going to start on that first piece. So in the evolution of things that we're moving into, I think this is really a good step. To all your points and all the points made here today, it's just a broad, our services and what we do at PRTC. With that, any more comments, questions? All right, we'll call for the vote.
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin.
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Karen Mills,
Aye.
Kim Short,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary,
Aye.
Pamela Sabeski,
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion's approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Item 11.3, authorized closed meeting of the Potomac PRTC. The resolution to authorize a closed meeting of the PRTC to discuss a personnel matter concerning the executive director's performance evaluation and incentive. Ms. Pandix, if you could read.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll just add to what you said. It's pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A1. We can have this discussion in closed meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Allen, seconded by Commissioner Short. Well, do we need discussion? Just maybe we check that first. Yeah, discussion. Okay, call for vote.
Victor Angry,
Aye.
Kenny Bodie,
Aye.
Margaret Franklin,
Aye.
Janine Lawson,
Aye.
Karen Mills, Kim Short,
Aye.
Tanisha Allen,
Aye.
Monica Gary,
Aye.
Pamela Sabeski,
Aye.
Preston Banks,
Aye.
Deborah Frazier,
Aye.
Grant Sparks,
Aye.
George Barker.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion is approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
If you give us a moment, RT is going to come in and make sure that this is not being broadcast over YouTube.
Thank you, ma'am. So we're gonna go into
Put all the
closed session.
Bob's business out there.
Now we're gonna go take a break.
Walking over to Chris. Thank you.
We don't have to. Really good. I think that's the.
I would ask.
Yeah, oh,
Too. You think I can go?
you
Ask
go.
them, I don't say I'm on the.